Call 911 now, she's turning blue, Branton Kellar shouted as he dropped his mop onto the floor and sprinted forward. Gasps erupted across the executive boardroom. Just minutes earlier, Arlena Crestwood, the billionaire CEO of Crestwood Industries in the heart of Grayford City, had been standing at the head of the long oak conference table, her voice firm and steady as she presented the quarterly numbers. Her deep brown skin glowed under the conference lights, her natural hair pulled back in an elegant twist. Gold earrings caught the light as she gestured toward the projected slides behind her. Then, mid-sentence, she stopped. Her hand rose to her chest. Her breath faltered. The room plunged into terrifying silence as her body convulsed once, twice, then collapsed to the floor with a heavy thud. At first, no one believed it. The executives froze. 7 men and women in suits worth more than Branton earned in an entire year. Someone muttered, "She's joking." Another whispered, "Oh God, call security." A woman in pearls simply stared, her mouth hanging open in disbelief. Then the truth hit like a freight train. Arlena Crestwood wasn't moving. Her lips were turning purple. Her chest wasn't rising. But Branton didn't hesitate. He pushed through the door, forcing his way past a wall of expensive perfume and luxury suits. His worn sneakers squeaked against the polished marble floor as he rushed toward the fallen woman. "Branton, what are you doing?" someone barked. "You don't belong in here," another snapped. "Get out immediately. This is an executive meeting." "I know CPR," Branton shouted, but no one seemed to care. They looked at his gray janitor's uniform, at his dark hands gripping the doorframe, and saw only an intruder who had no business being among them. Arlena lay on her side, one arm limp across her chest, her lips shifting into a terrifying gray blue. She wasn't breathing. Branton dropped to his knees beside her, his dark hands steady despite his racing heart. He had seen death before in his old neighborhood. He knew what it looked like when someone was slipping away. "Miss Crestwood, can you hear me?" he whispered, panic rising in his throat. He pressed 2 fingers to her neck, searching desperately. No pulse. The seconds stretched into eternities. Then he acted without another moment of hesitation. He had once taken a free CPR class at the West Grayford Community Center just to get a food voucher for his daughter. But in this moment, the instructor's voice echoed louder than anything else in that room. If they're not breathing, you are their lungs. If their heart stops, your hands become their heartbeat. He tilted her head back, pinched her nose, and leaned down to deliver the first rescue breath. "Is he kissing her?" someone shrieked, voice piercing the chaos. "That's disgusting," another cried. "Get him off her immediately. Someone stop him." A sharp pain tore across Branton's back. Someone had swung something, hard, maybe a security baton, maybe an umbrella, straight into him. The impact sent fire through his spine. He groaned, but didn't stop. He couldn't stop. Her life depended on him. He continued. 2 breaths. Then he locked his hands together over her sternum. Chest compressions. 1, 2, 3, 4. He counted in his head, focusing on the rhythm, blocking out the chaos erupting around him like wildfire. Another blow landed hard on his shoulder. He winced, tears springing to his eyes from the pain, but kept counting, kept pressing. His arms burned with exertion, but he refused to give up. "You filthy janitor," someone hissed close to his ear. "Don't touch her. You're contaminating her." The boardroom exploded into chaos around him. Voices overlapped, shouting, crying, accusations flying like shrapnel. But Branton stayed anchored to his task. His arms burned, his back throbbed with each compression, his eyes stung with sweat, but he did not stop. "Don't," he whispered through clenched teeth, tears streaming down his dark cheeks. "Don't die like this. Come on, come back to us." 25, 26, 27. Someone grabbed his shoulder and yanked him backward violently. Branton tore himself free with strength he didn't know he possessed, continued compressions, then leaned down for 2 more breaths. He tasted her lipstick, felt the cold of her skin, and prayed harder than he ever had in his entire life. 30 compressions, 2 breaths, again and again. He lost count of how many cycles. Suddenly, Arlena's chest jerked violently beneath his hands. She coughed, a wet, desperate sound, then sucked in air like someone being pulled from the bottom of the ocean. Her eyelids fluttered. Her fingers twitched against the cold floor. She was breathing. Branton collapsed backward, his whole body trembling uncontrollably. His back was burning, his shoulders raw, his hands numb from the compressions. But she was alive. He had saved her. The billionaire CEO of Crestwood Industries was breathing because a janitor refused to look away. The expensive suits swarmed her now, tripping over themselves in clumsy panic. "Miss Crestwood, Arlena, stay with us! Someone get water! Where are the paramedics?" The boardroom doors burst open, and paramedics rushed in with a stretcher and medical bags. They took over immediately, their movements practiced and efficient. One of them turned back and asked, "Who started CPR? They saved her life." "I did," Branton said, voice weak and raspy. He was still on the floor, unable to stand. He didn't get to say anything more before a tall man with silver hair stepped forward. His badge read, Tiberius Blackwell, CFO. His dark face, usually composed and professional, was now twisted with barely concealed disgust. "What's your name?" he demanded, looking down at Branton like he was examining something unpleasant on his expensive Italian shoes. "Branton Kellar," he said, struggling to his feet on shaking legs. "I'm a janitor, night shift, 22nd floor." "You put your mouth on Miss Crestwood," the man said slowly, emphasizing each word as if Branton had contaminated the CEO rather than saved her life. "You touched her without authorization." "She wasn't breathing," Branton replied, confusion mixing with the pain radiating through his battered body. "Her heart had stopped. I was trying to save her life." "I'll be reviewing the security footage," the CFO snapped, cutting him off with a dismissive wave. "You need to leave immediately and do not return until contacted. Security will escort you out." Branton's throat tightened. His back still throbbed where they had struck him. He looked around at the executives whose boss he had just saved from dying in front of them. 7 pairs of eyes stared back at him, some suspicious, some disgusted, some simply blank with indifference. Not a single thank you. Not one word of gratitude. Branton bent down slowly, every muscle screaming in protest, grabbed his bucket with trembling hands and pushed it out of the boardroom. Each step felt heavier than the last. That night, Branton sat hunched in a hard bus seat, swallowed up by the crowd of tired commuters heading home. His back curved as if he were trying to fold into himself and disappear from the world. City lights streaked past the window, stretching into long, blurred lines that reflected the tears he refused to let fall. By the time the bus dropped him off in his familiar neighborhood, night had already swallowed everything. The streetlights flickered uncertainly, some completely dark. The air held only the distant rumble of a freight train and the lively shouts of kids playing basketball in the alley. Sounds that felt as though they belonged to a life far removed from his own. Miri ran to meet him at the door, barefoot on the cold linoleum, clutching her worn-out teddy bear with the missing eye. Her braids bounced as she moved, and her dark eyes lit up at the sight of him despite the late hour. "You're home late," she said, in a tiny, worried voice. "Are you okay, Daddy? Miss Juniper made mac and cheese, but I saved you some because I know it's your favorite." "I'm okay, sweetheart," Branton answered, a lie he had grown far too used to saying. He knelt down and pulled her into a tight hug, breathing in the smell of her strawberry shampoo. "Just a crazy day at work. Nothing for you to worry about." Dinner was reheated mac and cheese and leftover stir-fried vegetables that had seen better days. Miri chattered about school, about her teacher, Mrs. Robinson, and the art project she was working on, and the boy who pulled her braids at recess. Branton nodded here and there, making sounds of interest, though his mind was still trapped inside that cold boardroom. When Juniper Hale, the elderly neighbor who watched Miri on his work nights, gathered her things to head home, Branton forced a smile even though his lips felt heavy. She was 73, years old, moved slowly with arthritic knees, but she loved Miri like a grandmother and never asked for much in return. "You look like you've seen a ghost," Juniper observed, her wise old eyes studying his face with concern. "I'm fine, Miss Juniper, just tired. Night shift takes it out of you." She didn't look convinced, but she nodded and shuffled out the door into the cold night. When Miri finally fell asleep, curled up with her teddy bear and the dinosaur nightlight casting soft shadows on the cracked wall, Branton lay down on the thin mattress in the corner of their one-room apartment. He listened to the heater sputter in the dark, a rhythm he had come to know like a heartbeat. His fingers brushed the bruise along his back, sharp, throbbing pain that made him wince. He closed his eyes, but the image of Arlena Crestwood lying unconscious beneath his hands replayed over and over. He had saved a woman's life. He knew he had. The paramedics had confirmed it. And yet all they saw was a poor janitor, a single black father in a worn uniform who dared to touch a billionaire. The next morning, Branton stood in front of the Crestwood Industries tower wearing the same gray uniform he had pulled on for the past 3 months. The sun had barely risen, its soft amber light spilling across the plaza. He stepped toward the revolving door, but before he could touch the handle, an arm shot out in front of him. "Sir, you can't enter," the security guard said, his voice flat and emotionless. Branton blinked in confusion. "What? I work here. Night shift. 22nd floor." The guard didn't even look at him. "I was instructed not to let you in. Contact human resources." Branton stood frozen at the entrance, the morning wind cutting through his thin jacket as streams of office workers walked past him without stopping, without seeing. At the service desk, the supervisor returned with a sealed envelope. His face was expressionless. "You're terminated," he said flatly. Branton felt something inside him snap, clean and brutal. "Terminated? But why? What did I do?" The supervisor shrugged, not meeting his eyes. "HR said it's for inappropriate conduct involving senior personnel. That's all I know. I'm sorry, Branton." Inside the envelope was a termination letter and his final paycheck. No severance, no explanation, just the words, "Employment ended immediately." Back outside, his phone buzzed, a message from a coworker, a screenshot from the staff group chat. "See that? That janitor creep was all over Miss Crestwood when she passed out. Looked like he was kissing her." Another. "Disgusting. Was that assault? Should we report it?" Branton's chest tightened. They had twisted the truth. CPR, the breaths that saved her life, they had turned it into something vile, something criminal. That night, he lay staring into the darkness. "Justice isn't blind," he whispered to the water-stained ceiling. "It just refuses to look down." In the middle of the night, the phone rang. "Mr. Kellar? This is Human Resources from Crestwood Industries. Our internal investigation is complete." His heart lurched with desperate hope. "So does that mean I can—" "Your employment has been terminated effective immediately," the woman cut in. "The internal review determined your conduct to be inappropriate. We will not be pursuing criminal charges at this time, but we strongly advise you not to return to the premises." "Inappropriate? I was performing CPR. She wasn't breathing, her heart had stopped." "The decision is final, Mr. Kellar." The call ended, clean and merciless, as if he had never existed at all. Days passed and Branton still hadn't found a job. His mornings slipped by in silence, circling job listings in the classifieds with a red pen. In the afternoons, he went door to door, laundromats, diners, cleaning companies, but everywhere the answer was the same. A hesitant look, a hushed whisper, then a polite shake of the head colder than the winter air outside. By the morning of the 4th day, The name Branton Kellar had become a rumor spreading like smoke through every corner of the city. At the laundromat on the corner, a young woman folding clothes glanced over at him with recognition in her eyes. "You're the guy from that building, right? The one who—" She trailed off uncomfortably. Branton tried to smile, but it never reached his eyes. "The man who tried to save someone and got fired for it." She pressed her lips together. "People say you did more than that." Branton didn't ask what more than that meant. He already knew. The internet had twisted his CPR into something filthy. Someone had leaked a still frame from the security footage, blurry but clear enough to plant doubt. The image of him performing rescue breaths had become evidence of assault in the court of public opinion. Back home, the small apartment smelled like old carpet and reheated coffee. Juniper Hale sat by the window, wearing her reading glasses and holding a large print newspaper. "Have you eaten yet?" she asked, concern evident in her weathered face. "Not yet. Let me fix something for Miri first." The girl shuffled into the kitchen, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Daddy, are you going to work today?" "Not today, sweetheart. I'm taking a little break." "Miss Juniper said people are being mean to you." "Why would anyone be mean to you, Daddy?" Branton bent down and brushed a strand of hair from her beautiful face. "Sometimes people are afraid of things they don't understand. But things will be okay. I promise you that." Juniper watched from the kitchen counter. "You can't fight the ones who write the stories," she said quietly. "They always win in the end." "I don't want to fight," Branton replied. "I just want them to tell the truth." That afternoon, he took the bus to a small cleaning service on the east side. The owner, a heavy-set man in a dress shirt, glanced over his paperwork, then set it down, on the desk with a heavy sigh. "You used to work at Crestwood Holdings?" "Yes, sir." The man crossed his arms and leaned back in his chair. "I've heard about that situation. I can't afford that kind of attention here. Clients don't like controversy. Try somewhere else." When Branton stepped back outside, the sky had darkened with threatening clouds. As he walked along the cracked sidewalk toward the bus stop, a group of teenagers stood outside a convenience store, their phones glowing blue in the dim light. "Yo, that's him," one said loudly. "The janitor guy. I saw the clip. Dude was kissing that billionaire lady for real." Laughter burst out, chasing Branton down the block like stones thrown at his back. That night he tried to delete his social media accounts, but every time he did, another fake profile popped up with his picture and vicious captions. He shut the phone off and sat in the dark, listening to Miri's soft breathing from the mattress. When he finally lay down beside her, his body felt like lead. His phone buzzed one more time, a voicemail from his sister. "Branton, people at church are talking. They saw some video online. Maybe you should stay quiet for a while." He deleted it without responding. "God," he whispered into the darkness. "If you're listening, what am I supposed to do now?" On the other side of the city, in a brightly lit penthouse overlooking the Grayford city skyline, Arlena Crestwood sat in front of her laptop. The security footage had finished playing for the third time, but the image of Branton kneeling beside her was still burned into her mind like a brand. She saw the fear on his face as he pushed through the door, the determination as he dropped to his knees, the pain as someone struck him across the back with brutal force, and the horror as he was dragged away like a criminal after saving her life. She had built a billion-dollar empire on decisive choices and faith in the chain of command. But this had slipped past her like smoke, and it had nearly destroyed a man who deserved nothing but gratitude. Her jaw tightened, her manicured fingers curled into fists. "Find him," she murmured into the quiet room, "before this goes too far." Arlena didn't call her driver. She pulled on jeans, a cashmere sweater, and grabbed her own car keys. The black Mercedes glided through the city as she headed west, watching glass towers gradually give way to old brick buildings, peeling murals, and windows boarded with warped plywood. She had grown up in a neighborhood not unlike this one, back before her father's business took off, back before she became the woman on billboards. She had almost forgotten what it looked like, what it smelled like, what it felt like to live on the margins of a society that preferred to pretend you didn't exist. The neighborhood where Branton lived was a different world entirely from the kingdom of glass and gold she now commanded. Potholes rattled her expensive wheels. Kids played on muddy lots, chasing each other around rusted cars. A man sold hot dogs from a battered cart, steam rising in thick clouds against the cold December air. She found the address, a low brown building with peeling paint and a sagging metal staircase. She knocked and waited. A little girl appeared, hair tied in small braids, t-shirt too thin for the weather. Her dark eyes widened with innocent wonder. "You're the lady from the billboard," she whispered. "The one on the big building downtown." "I'm looking for Branton," Arlena said, softening her voice. The girl's face pinched with worry, her small hands gripping the door frame. "He's sick. He won't get up. I tried making soup like Miss Juniper taught me. I tried giving him medicine. Nothing worked. He just keeps saying he's tired, then he lies down again." Arlena's throat tightened with sudden fear. "How long has he been like this?" "Since he lost his job," the girl replied, her voice trembling. "He stopped eating. He kept saying it's not fair. Then he just stopped talking altogether." Arlena pushed the door open gently and stepped inside. The apartment was tiny, faded walls with water stains, a heater rumbling in the corner but barely warming the room. The smell of mildew hung in the stale air. Branton lay curled on a thin mattress tucked into the corner, wrapped in 2 worn blankets. His dark face was gaunt, cheeks hollow, breath frighteningly shallow. She knelt beside him. "Branton, it's me, Arlena Crestwood." He didn't move. She took his hand in hers. It burned with fever, the skin dry and cracked. "Call an ambulance," she shouted toward the hallway. "Now!" The girl stood frozen in the corner, clutching a ragged teddy bear, dark eyes wide with terror. Arlena squeezed Branton's hand harder. "You saved my life," she said, her voice breaking with emotion. "Now it's my turn to save yours. You hear me? You don't get to give up." The ambulance arrived within minutes. Paramedics worked fast, lifting Branton onto a stretcher. "Severe dehydration, fever above 103, shallow breathing," a paramedic said, hooking up an IV. "Blood pressure dangerously low. This is systemic stress. His body just gave up." Arlena stepped into the ambulance without hesitation. "I'm not leaving him." At the private medical center, Arlena waited in the sterile hallway. She called Faye Renix, her legal assistant. "He's at Northside Medical. Cancel everything for 2 days and bring his daughter Miri here. She's alone with an elderly neighbor named Juniper Hale. I want them both taken care of." When Miri arrived about an hour later, accompanied by a concerned social worker and a very worried Juniper, Arlena was standing by the window, watching snowflakes fall across the city skyline. She turned when she heard the girl's small voice. "Is my daddy okay?" Arlena knelt to be at eye level with her. "The doctors are taking care of him right now. Your daddy is very strong, stronger than anyone I've ever met. He saved my life once. I believe he can do this." Miri nodded, her lower lip trembling. "I made soup for him, but he wouldn't eat. I tried my best." "You did more than your best, sweetheart. You cared for him the way he cared for me." A nurse appeared at the doorway. "Miss Crestwood, you can see him now." Branton lay on the bed, an oxygen tube beneath his nose, IV fluid dripping steadily into his arm. His chest rose and fell slowly. Alive. "He'll pull through," the nurse said softly. "Severe exhaustion, dehydration, malnutrition. But he's responding well to treatment." Miri stepped to the bedside and placed her teddy bear on her father's chest. "I took care of you, Daddy," she whispered through tears. Now you gotta wake up. Arlena sat beside the bed for hours, watching his face slowly regain color. She thought about the board meeting, the morning he had walked in, the way no one looked at him, the way even she hadn't spared him a glance. He had stepped into that room like air, invisible, and yet that invisible man had been the one to save her life when everyone else froze in useless panic. She couldn't erase what had happened, but she could change everything that happened next. Hours later, Branton stirred. His eyelids fluttered, his fingers twitched. Arlena shot to her feet. "Branton?" His head tilted, eyes opening and blinking into focus. He looked around the unfamiliar room in confusion. "Where am I?" he rasped. "You're in the hospital. You collapsed, but you're safe now. Why are you here?" "Because I watched the footage. All of it. Every second. I saw what you did. You saved my life, Branton, and they punished you for it. They beat you. They fired you. They destroyed your reputation. And I let it happen." Her voice cracked with emotion. "I'm truly sorry." Tears welled in his eyes. "They said I assaulted you. They lied. And I let them lie on my behalf. But it won't be like that anymore. I promise you." "It doesn't matter," he said, turning away. "I'm just a janitor. Someone like me, no one believes no matter what I say." "I believe you," she said slowly. "Not just because I saw the video, but because I felt it. You were the only one who did anything, the only one who didn't turn away." Branton looked back at her, his voice weak but steady. "Then help me. Not just with doctors or bills. Help me be seen. Help my daughter grow up in a world where doing the right thing doesn't mean losing everything." Arlena nodded. "I will. You're not invisible anymore, Branton. I see you." 2 days later, Branton crossed the threshold of a new apartment. His legs still shook, but all of that suddenly felt small. Warm, golden light washed over the cozy space. No more cracked walls, no more flickering bulb. Instead, a beige sofa with clean cushions, a wooden coffee table, a soft rug underfoot, and curtains that matched the freshly painted walls. Miri shot past him, her eyes wide with wonder. "We have our own kitchen, Daddy. There's cereal and juice, and my own room." Branton blinked rapidly, fighting down the tears. Juniper stepped in slowly, leaning on her new walker. "Oh my lord, I haven't seen a place this clean since your Aunt Beatrice's wedding back in '89. On the kitchen counter sat a welcome package. A card was tucked under a vase of fresh daisies. "You deserve peace. AC." Branton folded the card and pressed it to his chest. In the days since leaving the hospital, he hadn't seen Arlena in person, but her fingerprints were everywhere. Private medical care for him and Juniper, a full-service moving company, therapy sessions for Miri, new clothes and school supplies. And in his email inbox sat a job offer he still hadn't opened. She didn't push. She didn't call to demand an answer. She simply opened a space for him to heal. Juniper eased onto a bar stool. "Son, you sure this isn't some kind of trap?" "She hasn't asked me for anything," Branton replied. "She's not handing down charity. She's giving me back justice." The following Monday, Branton stood in front of the Crestwood Executive Annex. As he stepped into the lobby, the security guard nodded at him respectfully. The receptionist smiled warmly and said, "Good morning, Mr. Kellar." The elevator lifted him to an empty open floor, flooded sunlight, and a wide view of the river in the distance. Arlena stood by the window, her natural hair loose today, framing her face like a crown. "I was starting to wonder if you'd changed your mind," she said, without turning around. "I almost did. Twice, actually." She turned to face him, smiling. "But you came. I came. This entire floor is yours. For the new department. Still trying to convince me to take the job?" He raised an eyebrow. "If anyone deserves to design an employee welfare program for this company, it's someone who knows firsthand what it feels like to be overlooked, to be invisible, to be destroyed for doing the right thing." Branton walked slowly around the space, running his fingers along the window frame. I've never had an office. The only keys I ever owned were for a supply closet and a mop cabinet. Then it's time you had a different kind of key. Why are you really doing this? He asked, turning to face her directly. Arlena met his eyes without flinching. Because when I was lying on that floor between life and death, I realized I didn't deserve half the respect people gave me. Not the way you did. Power without responsibility is just an illusion, and I've had enough of living in that illusion. She pulled out a thick sketch pad and marker. This is yours. Design whatever you want. Branton took the pen. For a long moment, he just held it. Then he began to write. I want windows in every working room. Real, natural light. No more break rooms that look like broom closets. And I want a real welfare fund. Transportation support. Childcare assistance. Rent assistance for employees. In crisis. Not just yoga classes for the sake of pretty photos in the annual report. An hour later, the sketch pad was filled with diagrams, support offices, counseling rooms, a childcare space for employees' kids, a quiet area for night shift workers to rest. So, am I supposed to take this as you saying yes? Arlena asked. Branton set down the pen. I'm saying yes. Not because I want to work for you, but because I want to work for the people this system used to forget. People like me. Across the city, in a dim conference room, Tiberius Blackwell poured bourbon with a trembling hand. Arlena was building a new department, and she had put that janitor in charge. The man he had fired, the man he had tried to destroy. He dialed a number. Find me anything on Branton Kellar. Old debts, sealed records, anything. I want him discredited completely. The next morning, Branton's phone buzzed. A message from Faye. Call me now. Something's wrong. There's been a leak, Faye said urgently. Your old eviction records, hospital papers, even a sealed juvenile misdemeanor from when you were 16. Someone's trying to smear you. Blackwell, Branton said quietly. I'm not hiding. When he arrived at the annex, rumors had already raced ahead of him. But Branton walked in with his head held high. On his desk lay a bouquet of sunflowers and a handwritten card. The truth is always louder than the noise. Keep walking. AC. Within an hour, he requested an all-staff meeting. The room filled quickly. Administrative staff, security guards, cafeteria workers, maintenance crew, cleaners. Branton stood in front of them with no notes, hands trembling slightly. Some of you have probably seen the headlines, he began. There are people who want you to believe that a person's past is enough to erase their future. That one mistake should be enough to silence them forever. He walked slowly along the front row. I don't believe that. Yes, I've faced eviction. Yes, when I was 16, I had a minor charge for stealing cough medicine for my sick mom. That record was sealed years ago. I'm not ashamed. Those things are part of who I am. He swept his gaze across the room, meeting every pair of eyes. This space was created for people who never get a seat at the big table, for the ones who've cried in the supply closet and still walked out smiling the next day. You don't have to be perfect to fight for justice. You just have to show up. And I'm standing here. Silence. Then someone started clapping. Within seconds, the entire room was filled with thunderous applause. Across town, Arlena sat with the legal team. I want Blackwell's badge revoked today. Anyone who targets Branton Kellar is targeting this company's values, and they will answer to me. 6 months later, Branton stood on stage at a national conference on labor justice, with a presentation, a team, and his name printed on the main speaker lineup. The welfare program had officially launched. In the first month alone, over 200 reports were submitted. 7 abusive managers were terminated. 12 employees were promoted after years of unfair evaluations were finally reviewed. Miri sat in the front row, legs swinging, eyes shining with pride. Juniper, stronger now after months of physical therapy, clapped enthusiastically every time Branton's name was mentioned. Arlena sat further back, not to take the spotlight, but to witness what they had built together. "My name is Branton Kellar," he began, his voice steady and clear. "I'm not the kind of flawless hero you usually see on inspirational posters. I was a janitor, a single father, a man who saw something wrong and decided not to look away. If that makes me troublesome, then I hope more of us are willing to cause that kind of trouble." When he finished, Miri didn't wait even a second. She ran straight onto the stage and threw her arms around him. "You did so good, Daddy!" Branton laughed, lifting her up. "We did good, sweetheart. Together." Arlena approached as the applause finally faded. "You've changed this company, Branton. Not just the policies, the culture. We've still got a long way to go. Yes, but at least now we're walking in the right direction." That night, Branton sat on the balcony of their new apartment, city lights flickering like earthbound stars below. His phone buzzed with a message from Faye. "3 more companies want to implement your model. They're asking for consultations." He smiled and typed back, "One safe workplace at a time. Let's do it." Miri stepped out onto the balcony, wrapped in her favorite blanket. "Are you happy now, Daddy?" Branton pulled her onto his lap, wrapping his arms around her tightly. "Yeah, baby. Finally, I'm happy." For the first time in his life, Branton felt truly seen. Not as an anonymous employee, not as the victim of a scandal, but as a human being who had earned his seat at the table. And he knew that from here on, he would use that seat to make sure others got theirs too. The journey of Branton Kellar shows us that courage isn't always found in loud, dramatic gestures. Sometimes it lives in small, quiet choices, choosing integrity when no one is watching, speaking truth when silence would be easier, standing firm when the world wants you to bow. Justice doesn't demand perfection from us. It only asks that we refuse to let fear define our truth. No matter where you come from, no matter how the world tries to diminish you, your voice matters. Your actions matter. And when that voice is raised with purpose and conviction, it can become a force powerful enough to change not just one life, but an entire system.